Hello my friends, welcome back to another tutorial. I hope you're all keeping very well out there. In this tutorial I'm going to paint some lovely birch trees. Someone asked me to show them how I would paint birch trees. So a nice simple little scene. You could call it a snow scene, but there's no snow as such and it's just on the floor. But a nice couple of birch trees coming up, and let's see if we can create birch trees. There's a couple of different ways you can paint birch trees. There's a lot of tutorials online as well, lots of different techniques, but this is my technique. This is how I like to paint birch trees. I find it quite a simple technique, but very realistic. So let's have a bit of fun. Let's paint some birch trees. Grab your brushes everyone, let's go and have some fun. Alright, so here's my palette. A little bit of paint from a painting I did earlier, but it's fine, it's all still wet. These are my colours: titanium white, naples yellow, phaylo blue, lamp black, magenta, burnt umber. I don't know if we need cadmium red, but it's there anyway for a little bit of light and a little bit of warmth. This is my canvas, 16 by 12 canvas. Now let me just make sure you can see everything here. Yeah, there and there you can see. I don't know, should I just pull my camera back ever so slightly? Ever so slightly. There we go. I'm just going to start with, now this is the reference photograph, isn't that lovely? I'm just going to start with a nice bright blue sky. Let's take some phthalo blue and lots of white. I'm going to warm this ever so slightly with some, now I do have some thinners in this as well. I'm going to warm this ever so slightly with some magenta. So it's a very thin mix of a mauvey bluey kind of a shade. Now I don't want it too thin. I want to build up a nice thickish layer. So it's more like a kind of a thin creamy consistency. Does that make sense? And I do want to go nice and rich on top as well. So a bit more blue, a bit more magenta. Now if you don't have magenta, you can use cadmium red as well. Absolutely fine. Okay, don't be shy. You can use cadmium red with the blue. It just makes it a slightly softer kind of a color. Let me show you what I mean. So if I take phthalo blue and a bit of red, you see it goes a kind of a softer blue. It doesn't have the same impact as magenta. So magenta, it just kind of warms the blue, makes it a very warm wintry kind of a blue. So let's paint that all the way down and let's add white as we're coming down. I'm going to take some white into that. I'll go across my horizon line here, we'll say. That's the end of my sky, roughly. I'm going to just paint that in. It's almost white, okay? So pick up some white, put it on. You can see there's already paint on my brush, so it's, you know, it's going a little bit blue, but it's a nice soft colour. And then let's warm it again a little bit more. I think it needs a little bit more warmth in this. A little bit of magenta. And I'm really just I'm sort of scraping this onto the canvas. I'm putting on a thin layer. Because if I put on a very thick layer on this, when it comes to my trees, it's going to be very messy. So I do like to put on thin layers. And of course you can let this dry if you like, but I'm a very impatient kind of an artist. I like to just keep going. I don't like to having to wait between layers, so that's why I primarily paint wet into wet all the time with oils. Now I'm going to darken the top of this with some blue and magenta, and I want to put a nice rich blue right across the top of this. And darken it, just bring it down and leave it soften into the colours underneath. There we go. A nice simple sky. You can put clouds into this if you like, but I'm not going to put clouds into this today. I'm just going to let this nice simple blue sky, because we'll have lots of branches and all that kind of thing as well. Okay, I'm going to put a distant layer of trees off in the distance, just for perspective, okay? It's just to give the impression of perspective. Now I'm just going to fix my white balance here just ever so slightly. I just need to brighten the camera just a touch. There we go, that's absolutely fine. and I need to put it on clear background. I'm going to put a very light suggestion of some trees off in the distance. Let's take some blue with the pink and maybe a touch of the burnt umber, tiny touch of burnt umber. I just want to create a soft layer of trees off in the distance. Now you can use any brush for this. You can use a brush on edge like this. You can go up and down like this. It doesn't have to be any particular technique. I just like to keep things sort of simple. Now let them just fade off. I could go maybe a little bit higher with some of them. And I'm softening these into the sky as well. So you get some lovely effects when you soften it into the sky, don't you? Okay, nice and simple. Now I'll add a little bit of darkness into those. Magenta, burnt umber, and a little bit of black. So we have a kind of a pinkyish, grey sort of a colour, okay? And just down at sort of the bottom here, let's just soften a little bit of that dark colour into those trees, up and down, soften it. You see how I'm being very random with my brush. It's very, very, very simple. Just, let's take a touch of black, put a little touch of black in there as well. Just here and there, leave that soften in, and again soften it upwards. Just be very random with your brush. That just adds a nice depth to the background, doesn't it, I think. Now I'm going to clean my brush just very quickly, and I'm going to go put a very light colour across here. I'm going to go right into some white first, pick up a touch of blue. I'm going to put a very light, it's pretty much a whitey blue, okay, very much white. I'm going to soften it back in over here. So I'm not going pure white, it's more an off white. There's a hint of, a little bit of blue in this, a tiny hint of blue. As we come down we can put a bit more and pick up some of the grey. It's just a very simple background is all I want for this, okay? Very simple background. The focus is on these trees, all the trees. That's my main objective. This tutorial is about painting birch trees, so I'm going to keep the background and all of that very, very straightforward and simple. Now let's pick up a fan brush. All right, let's go to a fan brush, and we need to work in layers. When you're painting like this with oils especially, I tend to work in layers. So I'm just going to brighten that again ever so slightly. All right, there we go. I think that's a little better, isn't it? This camera has a habit of changing colours itself slightly. It gets cooler then warmer. It's a tricky one to get right. Let's take some white on our fan brush, and starting at the back layer, let's just dab in a little snow here and there. The reason for this is, if you paint your trees right away, you're then going to have to go in between your trees and try and paint the snow. So I tend to work in layers. So I start at the most distant layer off in the background and work down and work forward. Okay, just like that. Simply take some white on your fan brush and just dab as much as you like. Just have a bit of fun. It just creates a nice texturous kind of a snow feeling, doesn't it? Now you can come right down if you like. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a point where my first tree is going to be. So let me take a touch of brown, okay, just a slight touch of colour. I'm going to say my first tree will be over here somewhere, okay? Let's go like that. That's going to be my first tree over there. My next tree is going to be a couple here, isn't it? There's maybe 2 or 3 coming out of the ground here. So let's just say these are the bases of the trees, all right? What I do then is I put my shadows in. So I'm going to make a little shadow colour. Some blue, some magenta, and take a touch of black. a little bit of white. I don't want to go too dark with this, not very, very dark, all right? Maybe let's try a bit of cadmium red in this. So we've this nice kind of a purpley shadowy colour. From the base of these, let's just kind of drag that over, and it breaks apart, doesn't it, slightly, where the branches are coming into the shadow as well. So it breaks apart, comes over here. Then we have another one coming off of this, and another one here, a couple of small ones. Now you can soften these as well if you like, okay? But at least now we have our shadows in for those two trees. And as we get closer to the actual tree trunks themselves, I'm going to go nice and dark, a little bit of black, and just kind of flick it away. So we have those two done already, just like that. If you like, you can kind of go over these now with a soft brush. You can do whatever you like. I'm going to soften them in very slightly, look. There, just like that. Let's do the first birch tree. Okay, there's a few different ways now we can do this. You can paint the dark colour first and then go over it with the light, or you can paint the light colour first. I am going to get a palette knife and I'm going to start with the light colour. I'm going to start with the bright. So I'm going to paint these all on in a very bright white. Let's take a palette knife, let's get some titanium white, a little touch of Naples yellow, and a little touch of magenta. And I want plenty of Naples yellow in these because they're kind of catching the sun. So I want a very bright, luminous kind of a white. So let's take that colour on the edge of our palette knives like this and simply paint your tree trunk with your knife like this. Then we can break off a little bit. Then we can go, let's go straight on, all the way, like so. You can finish a lot of this then with your pointy brush. So let's thicken up this trunk now, right down here, all the way. Go right across with your palette knife. Don't worry if it gets a little messy, it's absolutely fine. That's understandable. Some people find a palette knife tricky to use. I think it's quite fun. I think it's a fun way to paint a tree. So I'm going to paint almost like the entire tree with my palette knife like this. Okay, so we have one bright tree. Let's go over and do the other side. We have a couple of nice ones over here. Let's start with this one here. Let's go with the center one then. I'm just sort of dabbing and scraping the paint off of the knife at the same time. Just little flicks with your palette knife. And we have another one here. Okay. So you can see we have three nice little highlighted tree trunks. Now I'll take a little tiny bit more, maybe put an extra one in there somewhere. That's my light part done. The next thing I like to do is put my dark side on. So I'm going to take some burnt umber, a little lamp black, tiny bit of white. Take a tiny bit of white into that. I have this sort of marbly effect, you see that? It's kind of a marbled effect. Then I'm going on the back side and I'm just putting a little bit here and there. Just for now. And I'll show you what I'll do then after that. Just a little dab. Down at the bottom, you can see there is quite a bit of this dark colour, isn't there? So I just drag it across like that, just like that for now, okay, just for now. The next thing I'm going to do is take my fan brush and I'm simply going to flick this with little flicks, small little curves, okay? Let me show you what I mean. Small curves just here and there. Dragging it across and around that tree trunk, okay? Now, depending on what brushes you have, you may need to use a very small fan brush as well. But this is just getting the beginning of the texture on the trunk, the shape of the trunk rather. I'm just barely flicking these around now, all right? You see, I'm just barely even touching them in some places. Now I'm going to zoom in to my painting for you so you can see properly. There. I'm just going to get a small pointy brush then, a very small pointy brush, the smallest brush you can find, the tiniest little brush. Let me see if I have one here. I'll go with this small detail brush. Let's take some of that burnt umber and some black, and with that on the tip of your brush, I'm simply going to just sort of add that little bit of dark, all right? And every here and there then I'm going to put a little bit of a mark through the tree trunk into the light side. So here, for example, look, a little mark. If you notice with birch trees, they have these little bits of black stuff going through them, don't they? And down at the bottom, I'm going to simply take some black and just flick some black into it just here and there, soften it down into the snow, drag it across. Let's go again, just here and there. As we come up, let's just add little dabs of black here and there. Because at the end of the day, we are just trying to create a little impression of a birch tree. I don't want to try and paint every single tiny little detail in a birch tree. I want to take my time and just make it fun to try. If you put loads of pressure on yourself to try and make it look realist, like a real photograph, you're going to become very frustrated with that. Very frustrated. I've tried it, believe me, I have tried many times to make something look like a photograph, but it's just too frustrating for me to try and do that. I'm just popping little dabs here and there, look. And I'm simply just kind of mixing it up. You see what I mean? You can do the very same with the light side as well. If you want to just take a little bit of white, you see, you can do the very same with the light side. Pop little bits of white onto the tree trunk here and there. And that just gives you some kind of bits of highlights as well. And you can also bring those across into the dark side. So it's, there's lots of different ways of doing this. Now the next thing I'm going to do is take some dark colour, some burnt umber and some black, lots of thinners in this. And I'm going to go up and start painting some branches and twigs and all that kind of thing. Now my brush might not be the best for this, but let's try it. Let's just zoom back slightly. And let's just pop in a few branches here and there. I have another one to come in here now as well, so I can do that later. I'm painting these in dark colour, and then I'm going to add some whites into them afterwards. I'm going to put another one here. I'm going to also bring one off here and just put a couple of little flicks off of that. It's simply lots of little flicks with your brush. All right. You know, don't be too constrained with your brush trying to paint branches and stuff like that, because again, you'll get very frustrated. Just keep it simple. A couple of little flicks is all you need. Now, I could be sat here for 3 hours painting all these tiny little branches, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to paint a few just to show you how I paint these types of trees. But you can keep going. You can add loads and loads and loads if you like. Now, I'm going to take some white. I'm just going to add another small one coming off of this. I'm going up and off. You see, it's just a suggestion, that's all. That's all it is, a small suggestion. Then I'll take some of the darker colour and I go on the back. Here and there. And just like before then, just give it a little flick around. Like that. Soften them together where they meet. Now once I have the dark branches done, I then get some white, some nice thick white on my brush, and I just kind of put flicks of white on top of those. Just to suggest the bright side of the branch. So the birch bark, let's say, the bright bark. So I just go along and I put a couple of flicks of white here and there, twisting my brush as I go to make sure I get the paint off. I think this is just a nice easy way of, if you're painting a nice landscape with a suggestion of birch trees, this is nice. It's a nice suggestion. It keeps it soft and at the same time getting a nice effect. So you can kind of see what I mean. Nice simple birch tree. You can go in and add loads and loads and loads onto this if you like. Don't be shy. Now I'm going to take some of that darker colour I had earlier, that kind of a greyish colour. I'm going to come over here and try a few on this. I do need to invest in some very nice little pointy brushes, because these brushes, they're just not the best at the moment. They're quite worn, and I need to, you know, it's always a great idea to have some really nice fine brushes in your box. I probably have some somewhere, but I have jars and jars of brushes here in front of me, and I could be forever now trying to find a very small pointy brush. So I just went for the first one I had close to me, as we do. But this is just a general impression that I would use. Once I have the darks done again, I go in with some brights. So I'm going with some white, and I pop a little suggestion of white here and there on the little twigs, just little flicks of paint. That's all it is. And it's nice then as well sometimes when it mixes with the darker shade slightly. That gives it another, you know, you've different little shades coming through. You can of course just put a little bit of foliage over all of this if you like as well. It's up to yourself. Sometimes a little bit of foliage can help give you the impression of lots of little branches off in the distance. Let's do another one. We've some really nice ones close down, don't we? Now I just need to, you see this little mark of paint? I'll just get that off with my palette knife, and I'll just put a little bit of white or something over it. That's fine. Some nice ones here in the front. Let's get some colour again. Let's get some Naples yellow, some white, and even a touch of cadmium red. We'll try some cadmium red for a change. See if we can get that nice, bright, sunlit colour. Here we go. Let's go right up the middle. Right up the middle with this. Give it a bit of a wiggle as we go up. We have a nice one that comes out the side, don't we? And then you see we cut through that one on the left, pushing that back behind. Now you may have your own ways of doing these kind of techniques for birch trees. This is how I like to paint them. It's just nice and simple and free. You know, you don't have to follow my technique. This is just how I like to create a nice simple sort of a birch tree effect on a tree. And I'll bring one then up the middle as well, and a slight bend. Yes? Just like that. Then, like the others, we go on with some of our darks. So again, let's take some burnt umber, some black, and a little white, creating that nice marbly, black kind of a marbly textured effect. I'm going to go all the way along the base of the trunk down here, and then as it comes up, just a little dab here and there. Just remember, follow the angle of your tree with your knife, like this, you see? Just a little here and there. Then we go back to our slightly smaller brush with some black, and we just add a little bit of detail. When I say detail, it's a suggestion of detail. That's all it is. Just some black on its own. Mixing it in with all that lovely thick palette knife that we have done, that nice palette knife work. Mixing it all in. And again, just little dabs of colour here and there through the tree trunk. Okay. Now we do have to use our fan knife effect as well with all of this, but I'm just for now just flicking little bits of colour through my trees. Just a couple of dabs of colour, just black. Let's go back to our fan brushes and let's just give a little sweep here and there. That just shows you the bark as it turns. That's the only reason, really, just to give you the impression of the bark turning around. So now, how about that? Let's go up and add some branches to all of these again. Okay, let's go up and pop a few in, just to make that settle into the landscape. I know this is a very simplified way of painting birch trees. You can go into a lot more detail with this type of technique, absolutely. And I could, as I said, I could sit here for 2 hours painting branches and whatnot, but you'd get bored, wouldn't you? So you can simply just use this technique and add lots and lots of little branches later on. It's completely up to yourself. You could keep going with this, adding loads of little branches. Absolutely. And have a bit of fun. Now I'll clean that again, go back into my white, and just put lots of white here and there on top of those branches. But I think it works as an effect for birch trees. I think, you know, when you're sitting back looking, they do actually look like birch trees, don't they? But I will refine some of the areas on the trunk in a moment with my palette knife as well, just to add some more light here and there. So I'm simply just painting a few flicks of white to suggest some of the bigger branches catching, you know, the white bark. You can see the white bark a bit more. Now if I go back to my palette knife, take a bit of white, and you can then just go and add little dollops of white here and there as well. And I might take a bit of black and just maybe sharpen up some of the back edges with some black. So, you know, just tidying up some of the back edges of the trunks. You can, absolutely, just do that with your palette knife or a small pointy brush. It's up to yourself. We do have a little bit of a shadow to put in on this bottom one, don't we? Let's take some of that nice little deep purpley mix that we made earlier and just give it a bit of a shape. Look, maybe a bit more blue in this. Let's get more a kind of a bluey, and then just take that and kind of bend it and shape it. You see what I mean? I'm then softening them into the shadow, into the ground. And just like that, we have some nice little birch trees on a landscape. Isn't that just wonderful? Now I will clean my fan brush and go back into some white and just add a bit of texture again down around the front here. Creating a little bit of snow. And what that's doing then as well, it's kind of sitting the trees down into the snow. You see what I mean? A little bit of snow just at the base of the trees, and that just kind of helps sit them in the ground. It anchors them down into the ground. And there we are, just like that. And after this, my friends, it really is entirely up to yourself how much further you would like to go with all of this. It's really up to yourself. You can stop or you can keep going. I'm happy enough with that. I really am. I'm just going to again, with some black, refine just some of the dark spots. On the tree trunks, just a little bit of darkness just down here and there. like so, and soften it back down. And my friends, really, there's no more you need to do for this. Only just keep going along and adding and adding with the branches, okay? It's just simply just like that. Keep adding as many branches as you like to your heart's content. You can just keep going and going and going and crisscrossing branches over each other and all of that. It's completely up to yourself. You can stop when you want to stop. I feel I've done enough just to show you the process, but you can keep going. Even when the cameras are off here, I might just keep doodling away at this and adding more bits of branches here and there. Absolutely. And be more finer with them as well. But you can come back to this as well when it's dry and add more. If you don't like the wet into wet technique, by all means, let it dry, come back and add a few more. So, Gary, I hope this has helped you a little bit. I really do. Gary was having a little bit of trouble trying to figure out how best to approach a birch tree in a simple way, a nice easy kind of a way. I think, Gary, this will have helped you a little bit. So there we go. You could maybe just add a little bit of white to the tree trunks as well, just to roughen up the bark. You see what I mean? Just give it that bit of rough look. And you can keep adding and adding and adding paint into this if you like. It's completely up to yourself. I will stop, because if I keep doodling now, I'll end up making it probably worse. So I will stop at that. I'm going to zoom in and show you very, very quickly. Let me just see if I can zoom in here slightly and give you a quick look. So you can get the idea. Using the palette knife, I find, is a very, very quick way of painting birch trees. And there we go. So, my friends, I hope that has helped you in your endeavours. Let me just move this thing out of the way. I really need to fix this stand, because there we go. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed that and found that informative and maybe a bit helpful as well. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you all to my patrons. Enjoy your painting. Remember, try to keep it simple. Try not to complicate things too much. You know, you can go into a lot of detail if you like. I prefer to keep something just very suggestive and very impressionistic almost. So that's just my take on painting birch trees. Have a bit of fun with that. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you very, very soon again here on Easy Oil Painting. Take care and God bless.